Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
What if I told you the Philadelphia Phillies are about to break every fan's heart in the most predictable way possible? The rumor mill just exploded, social media is on fire, and fans are losing their minds over a move that has almost zero chance of actually happening. You need to hear this before you get your hopes up. The Philadelphia Phillies rumor mill just went into absolute overdrive, and fans across the Delaware Valley are practically hyperventilating over the possibility of landing one of baseball's most electrifying young stars. Bo Bichette, the 27-year-old all-star shortstop from the Toronto Blue Jays, has become the obsession for every Phillies fan with a Twitter account and a dream. But before you rush out to buy that custom jersey with number 11 on the back, we need to pump the brakes, take a deep breath, and inject some serious reality into this fever dream that's consumed the fan base. Here's what's actually happening. The Phillies have scheduled a meeting with Bo Bichette for Monday. Not an in-person, roll out the red carpet kind of meeting, mind you, but a video call, a Zoom meeting, essentially. The same kind of meeting your boss schedules when they want to tell you about updated company policies. Now, does this mean the Phillies are genuinely interested? Absolutely. Does it mean Bo Bichette is practically signing on the dotted line and house hunting in the mainline suburbs? Not even close. Let's rewind to understand how we got here, because this story has more twists than a pretzel from Reading Terminal Market. Earlier this week, National Baseball insider Jon Heyman dropped the first breadcrumb, reporting that the Phillies were among a handful of teams interested in Bichette. The initial reaction from the rational portion of the fan base was skepticism. This had to be a negotiating tactic, right? The Phillies have been locked in an excruciating stalemate with franchise catcher JT Realmuto, who's been stubbornly holding out for a 3-year deal while the Phillies refuse to budge beyond 2 years. What better way to light a fire under JT's camp than to publicly flirt with another expensive middle infielder? It's the baseball equivalent of making your ex jealous by posting photos with someone new on Instagram. But then the drumbeat got louder. More interest was reported. Heyman doubled down, suggesting there was real substance behind the initial whispers. Then Matt Gelb, the Athletics Phillies beat writer who lives and breathes this team, confirmed that the interest was legitimate and that this Monday meeting was actually happening. Gelb isn't some national pundit throwing speculation at the wall to see what sticks. He's in the clubhouse, in the press box, talking to actual decision makers within the organization. When Gelb says something's real, it carries weight. Naturally, Phillies fans completely lost their minds. Social media exploded with speculation, mock lineups, and elaborate theories about how Dave Dombrowski was about to pull off the heist of the century. One report out of New York even suggested Bichette was almost certainly heading to Philadelphia, which sent the hype train careening off the rails at maximum speed. Everyone started envisioning opening day with Bo Bichette anchoring the middle infield, his bat providing the jolt this lineup desperately needs, and the Phillies finally making the kind of splash that signals they're not content to run back the same disappointing roster that fell short in recent Octobers. Here's the problem with all that enthusiasm. It's built on quicksand. Let's inject some cold, hard reality into this situation. Bo Bichette is not just any player. He's a 27-year-old all-star caliber talent who just came off a season where he helped lead the Blue Jays deep into playoff contention. He's proven he can perform on the biggest stages. He's entering his prime years. He's younger than both Bryson Stott and Alec Boehm, two cornerstones of the current Phillies infield. This is a generational talent hitting free agency at the perfect age, and he's about to get paid like it. Now, how many teams do you think are circling Bichette like sharks around wounded prey? Do you honestly believe the Phillies are the only suitors? Even when Kyle Schwarber was practically guaranteed to sign with Philadelphia last offseason, teams still tried to drive up the price just to make the Phillies sweat. That's how this business works. When a premium player like Bichette becomes available, every contending team with money to spend gets involved, if only to force other organizations to overpay. The market for Bichette isn't just competitive, it's going to be absolutely cutthroat. Let's talk money, because that's where this whole fantasy starts to crumble like a weak hoagie roll. At the beginning of the offseason, Dave Dombrowski met with owner John Middleton and proposed a payroll plan. The expectation was that the numbers would be similar to last year, not significantly higher. similar. The Phillies have already made moves to trim salary where they could, moving on from players like Matt Strahm, Max Kepler, Jordan Romano, and Joe Ross. They're likely parting ways with Harrison Bader. They might even find a way to dump Nick Castellanos and his albatross contract, though good luck finding a team willing to take on that mess without the Phillies eating significant money. Then the Phillies went out and signed Kyle Schwarber to a 5-year, $150 million extension. Boom, there goes most of the freed-up payroll space. They added Jesus Luzardo on a 1-year, $10 million deal to help the rotation. Another chunk gone. The plan all along has been to re-sign JT Realmuto to a 2 or 3 year deal, make some smaller bullpen and rotation moves, and call it an off-season. Bo Bichette doesn't fit into that equation at all. To sign Bichette, the Phillies would need to completely blow up their financial blueprint mid-off-season. We're talking about a 7 or 8 year commitment potentially worth north of $200 million for a player they weren't even seriously considering a month ago. Does that sound like the Phillies? Does that sound like any organization that's been preaching fiscal responsibility and sustainable roster construction? The only way this happens is if the stalemate with JT Realmuto has driven John Middleton into such a rage-fueled spite spiral that he's willing to completely change course out of pure petty vengeance. And while that makes for a juicy narrative, it's not particularly realistic. But let's say, just for the sake of argument, that the Phillies lose their minds and actually sign Bo Bichette. Let's play out that scenario. What happens next? The Phillies already have Bryce Harper locked into first base. Trea Turner isn't going anywhere at shortstop. Bryson Stott and Alec Boehm are both young, controllable pieces at second and third base, respectively. Edmundo Sosa provides valuable infield depth. So where exactly does Bichette play? And more importantly, who gets moved out? The answer is that the Phillies would have to trade either Stott, Boehm, or possibly both to clear playing time and payroll space. But here's the kicker. They're already trying desperately to trade Nick Castellanos and can't find a single team willing to take him on. Why? Because other organizations know the Phillies are stuck. They have no leverage. They have to move Castellanos. So why would any team offer fair value when they can just wait for the Phillies to panic and eat most of the contract? The same dynamic would apply to Stott or Boehm. The second the Phillies sign Bichette, every team in baseball knows they're desperate to clear roster space. Any leverage Philadelphia might have had evaporates instantly. So now they're stuck trying to trade a productive young player for pennies on the dollar while simultaneously absorbing bad contracts just to make deals happen. And they have to do all of this before pitchers and catchers report in about a month. Good luck with that logistical nightmare. Oh, and let's not forget that signing Bichette would require winning a bidding war against multiple deep-pocketed organizations who have just as much incentive to land him. The Phillies would be competing against teams like the Yankees, Dodgers, Mets, and whoever else decides to throw their hat in the ring. This isn't a situation where Bichette is sitting around waiting for Philadelphia to make an offer. He's going to have options, lots of them, and most of those options won't require the same roster gymnastics the Phillies would need to pull off. Now, there is one potential connection worth mentioning. Bo Bichette and new Phillies bench coach, someone have a relationship from their time together in Toronto. Some fans are latching onto this as evidence that Bichette might take a hometown discount or prioritize Philadelphia because of that personal connection. But let's be real for a second. This is a business. Bichette is 27 years old and about to sign what will likely be the biggest contract of his life. Is he really going to leave tens of millions of dollars on the table because he likes someone on the coaching staff? That's not how this works. Professional relationships are nice, but they don't override financial reality when we're talking about generational wealth. Here's what's probably actually happening. The Phillies do have genuine interest in Bo Bichette because he's an incredible player who would make any lineup significantly better. They're doing their due diligence by meeting with him and exploring what it would take to make a deal happen. But interest doesn't equal acquisition. Lots of teams are interested in Bichette. Very few can actually afford him, and even fewer can make the roster moves necessary to accommodate him without completely blowing up their organizational plans. The Phillies fall into that latter category. The most likely scenario here is that the Phillies are using the Bichette interest as leverage in their negotiations with JT Realmuto. They're sending a message, we have options, JT, so you might want to reconsider your contract demands. It's a classic negotiating tactic, and it makes sense given how long the Real Muto talks have dragged on without resolution. The Phillies want 2 years. Real Muto wants 3. Nobody's budging. So you dangle another option publicly and hope it motivates the other side to compromise. Bob Nightingale, another well-respected National Baseball insider, basically confirmed this by calling a Bichette signing a long shot. He didn't say it was impossible, but he made it clear that the odds are stacked heavily against it actually happening. Yet somehow, despite all the evidence pointing toward this being either a negotiating ploy or a pipe dream, fans have convinced themselves that Bo Bichette is practically a done deal. The hype has reached such absurd levels that people are already planning parade routes. This is exactly how you set yourself up for crushing disappointment. Fans are getting their hopes up for an outcome that realistically has maybe a 10% chance of happening, and that's being generous. When Bichette inevitably signs with another team, possibly the Blue Jays on a long-term extension, or maybe the Mets in a Steve Cohen money bomb special, Phillies fans are going to be furious. They're going to blame Dave Dombrowski for getting their hopes up. They're going to accuse the front office of being cheap. They're going to resurrect the run-it-back complaints and demand heads roll, and none of it will be justified because this was never a realistic possibility in the first place. Look, nobody wants to see the Phillies make a big splash more than the people who watch this team every single day. The fan base has every right to demand more from ownership after falling short in consecutive Octobers. The Dodgers keep adding pieces and building super teams while the Phillies seem content to tinker around the margins. That frustration is valid and understandable. But channeling that frustration into unrealistic expectations about Bo Bichette doesn't help anyone. It just sets everyone up for more anger and disappointment when reality inevitably crashes the party. The truth is that the Phillies are probably going to end up re-signing JT Realmuto to a 2-year deal, maybe with an option for a 3rd year if both sides can find middle ground. They'll make a few smaller moves to address the bullpen and rotation depth. Maybe they'll find a taker for Nick Castellanos if they're willing to eat enough salary, and that'll be the offseason. Is it exciting? No. Does it address all the team's needs? Probably not, but it's realistic. It fits within their stated financial parameters, and it doesn't require dismantling the roster or making desperate trades with no leverage. Bo Bichette would be an absolute game changer for this lineup. He's exactly the kind of impact bat the Phillies need to push them over the top. His addition would represent the ultimate "we're not running it back" statement from ownership. But wanting something to happen and that thing actually being likely to happen are two very different things. The Phillies meeting with Bichette on Monday is interesting. It's worth monitoring. It shows they're at least exploring their options, but it's not a precursor to a signing. It's due diligence. It's keeping options open. It's possibly creating leverage in other negotiations. So here's the advice. Take a deep breath, manage your expectations, and don't go buying that Bo Bichette Phillies jersey just yet. Actually, don't even think about buying it because the odds are overwhelmingly against this happening. Getting emotionally invested in a long shot outcome is only going to make you miserable when it doesn't materialize. Enjoy the speculation, have fun with the what if scenarios, but don't mistake smoke for fire. The meeting on Monday will happen. Maybe some interesting information will leak out afterward. Perhaps we'll learn more about what the Phillies are actually thinking or what Bichette's price tag looks like. But unless something truly shocking develops, the most likely outcome remains that Bo Bichette signs somewhere else. The Phillies eventually work out a deal with JT Realmuto, and this whole saga becomes a footnote in another underwhelming Philadelphia offseason. That's not cynicism. That's just reality based on how these situations typically play out and what the actual logistical and financial hurdles look like. So what do you think about all this Bo Bichette madness? Are you buying the hype, or are you as skeptical as you should be? Do you think JT Realmuto is coming back, or has that ship sailed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown of all the Phillies offseason chaos, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any updates as this story continues to develop. We'll be back with more coverage after Monday's meeting, so stay tuned. Until then, keep those expectations in check, and let's see if Dave Dombrowski has any tricks up his sleeve or if we're all just chasing shadows.